We have 2 standard EEGs at Vineland, I think 2 at Mullica Hill as well. They're available from 9 to 3. There's 1 tech. The use of it competes with the outpatient EEGs too. So if they're busy, both machines are in use, it would be impossible to get it done on an inpatient basis. And it's really only from 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. And this truly, this created a problem. We did not have any access to urgent or emergent EEG. If it's Saturday and there was a concern that a patient is seizing, that we could not call in a technologist. There was no one available. It would just be impossible to get an EEG. And this left a huge hole in the care that we provided to these patients. What ended up happening? Well, as you'll see on the next slide, we ended up transferring the patients. We lost over 2 patients, and this was looked at the calendar year 2020 before the implementation of Ceribell. We lost over 2 patients a month just for the need of conventional EEG or continuous EEG. And so we were left with a couple options. Number one, and get more EEGs, employ more techs. Costly. It's costly to get the number of techs to cover 7 days a week, all of those off hours. It's costly to get the equipment. This was based on kind of standard technology. Salary was over $500,000 to do that. Didn't seem very practical. And if you see in the bottom, this stat, I find this absolutely fascinating. 9 to 3 sounds like regular business hours. That sounds like a lot. But in fact, it's very, very little in the grand scheme of things. 9 to 3, that's 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 30 hours total, 24 hours in a day. You do the math, that's 1.25 day per week EEG was available. That means on an average week, 5.75 days, we would not have access to EEG. And Dr. Rincon is going to very quickly, he's going to go through how important it is to diagnose and to stop seizures quickly in terms of brain health. And so this truly, was a major gap. And so we had to do something. 82% of the time, we didn't have EEG. And so what did we do? As it says, we transferred the patients. And this is a nice map of Southern Jersey. And you can see the bottom is where Inspira Medical Center Vineland is, and about halfway is where Mullica Hill is. It's a little bit closer, but it would take approximately an hour, 45 minutes if you're in an ambulance going fast to get from one hospital to the other. That's an important thing to recognize when you're considering what seizures can do, and who pays for that transfer. We'll talk some about the financials, but usually the sending facility. Inspira has its own transferring system, transport system, but still those ambulances on average when transferring a critically ill patient, when you have an ACLS trained nurse, when you have all the monitors, we found it was roughly $7,500 per patient to transfer. And that's not the ones being flown. A helicopter for that distance can cost upwards of $30,000 per patient. And I wish it was that simple, right? I wish you could say, I have a patient, I think they're seizing, let's transfer them to Cooper, or let's transfer them to an academic hospital, and then boom, they're there. It's not that simple. So this is 8+ hours to obtain and read an EEG. Let me walk you through this. This is starting at the time where the transport team is available at the sending facility. So the bed's been assigned, the accepting doctor has accepted the patient, they're waiting for them. The transport team shows up to Inspira Vineland and says, I'm here to take Mr. Jones to Cooper. So just to do so, there's a lot that goes into it. First off, we have to move the patient from one bed to the stretcher. If they're on continuous medications, you have to move that over. If they're on the ventilator, you have to switch the vents. And I would say this says 30 minutes. I think that's generous. I've seen it take an hour or more. So it's not a simple transfer. Then you actually have to drive there. I showed you 45 minutes to drive there. You then got to move the patient and do the whole thing in reverse, another 30 minutes. Now this 4-hour time period, that's taken from multiple studies. They've replicated this where they say, I'm in an academic hospital, I need an emergent EEG now. And they measured how long does it actually take to apply that EEG? The answer, about 4 hours. That's a long time. And then once the EEG is on, what happens? It takes time to collect the data and have someone read and interpret that EEG. That's been shown to be 3 hours. So assuming you have a transport team ready to take the patient immediately, over 8 hours just to get and read the EEG. That to me seems unacceptable.